Hello, this is Wendy Lightheart, and for this lesson we are going to review solving geometry problems using linear equations. First, let's review a strategy for solving word problems using equations. The first step is to read the problem carefully. For geometry problems in particular, it's usually helpful to draw a picture or diagram to help you understand the problem better. Then let x or any variable represent one of the unknown quantities. The second step is to write expressions for any other unknown quantities in the problem in terms of x. Recall that the phrase "in terms of x" means as an algebraic expression that describes how the other unknown quantity is related to x. The third step is to write an equation in x that translates or models the conditions of the problem. For geometry problems, you will usually use a formula as the starting point for your equation. Once we've written our equation, we then solve this equation and use that solution to answer the problem's question. Lastly, be sure to check the solution in the original wording of the problem to be sure the problem is solved completely and that the solution seems reasonable. Let's use a strategy to solve a couple geometry problems. The first example reads, a basketball court is a rectangle with a perimeter of 86 meters. The length is 13 meters more than the width. Find the dimensions of the basketball court. Before we assign a variable, let's use a picture to help us understand the problem better. Since the basketball court is a rectangle, we'll start by drawing a rectangle. Notice that we are also given the perimeter of this rectangular court, so most likely we're going to need the formula for the perimeter of a rectangle. Now we need to let a variable represent one of the unknown quantities, and then write an expression for any other unknown quantities in terms of that variable. The two unknown values here are the length and width of the rectangle. In order to decide which of these will be represented by the variable, we need to look again at the wording of the problem. Since the problem states the length is 13 meters more than the width, this is telling us how the length is related to the width. So if we assign a variable to the width, say w, then the wording of the problem will help us to write an algebraic expression for the length in terms of w. The expression that describes how the length is related to the width is w plus 13, since the length is 13 meters more than the width. Now we are ready to write our equation, and the formula for the perimeter will be our starting point. First, notice that the problem tells us that the perimeter is 86 meters. So we can plug this into the formula for the perimeter. Next, we replace the L for length with the expression w plus 13, being sure to put it inside parentheses since the formula says to double the length. The variable for the width in the second term doesn't need to be replaced since we have already let w represent the width. Our equation is ready to be solved to answer the question. To simplify the right side, we need to distribute the 2. We combine like terms to finish simplifying the right side. Now that both sides are simplified, we can collect the constant terms on the left by subtracting 26 from both sides. This gives us 60 equals 4w, and we can finish solving for w by dividing both sides by 4. Thus we see that the width of this rectangular court is 15 meters. Looking back at the original wording of the problem, note that we we're asked to find the dimensions of the rectangle. Well, we've only found one of the dimensions, so we're not finished. Since we found the width to be 15 meters and we know the length is 13 meters more than the width, we simply add 13 to the 15 to obtain the length, which gives us a length of 28 meters. Does this answer seem reasonable? Well, we know that 28 meters is 13 meters more than 15 meters, so that seems correct so far. However, it is not the correct answer to the problem unless the perimeter of the rectangle is 86 meters. Well, we could plug these two dimensions into the formula to check the perimeter, or we can just use the fact that the perimeter is simply the distance around the rectangle and see if the lengths of the four sides add up to 86 meters. So let's pretend that we're walking around this rectangular basketball court. And so if we start up at the top left corner and walk clockwise around the rectangle, we will have walked 28 meters plus 15 more meters, which gives us 43 meters so far. Then we walk another 28 meters to give us 71 meters. And then finally walk 15 meters to finish our walk around the perimeter, which means we have walked a total of 86 meters. Now we can be confident in our answer since we have checked our solution with the original wording of the problem. This next example involves the circumference of a circle. The problem tells us that the circumference of a circle is 16 pi inches, and then asks us to find the circle's radius and diameter. Well, let's start by drawing a circle. Since we're given the circumference, we know we will most likely need the formula for circumference. There are two formulas for the circumference. However, since we need to find both the radius and the diameter, it doesn't really matter which one we use. Therefore, let's use the simplest of the two formulas, which say that the circumference of a circle is pi times the diameter. The diameter is the distance across the circle, so let's add the diameter to our circle. Going back to the wording of the problem, since it says the circumference of the circle is 16 pi, we can substitute the word circumference with 16 pi. We now have an equation in D that we can solve, since D is the only variable here. Keep in mind that pi is just the number. So to isolate D, all we need to do is divide both sides by pi. Notice that the pi's will cancel out on both sides, which leaves us with 16 equals D. Thus the diameter of the circle is 16 inches. Remember that we also need to find the radius. Well, the radius is the distance halfway across the circle from the center to the outside of the circle, which means the radius is half the length of the diameter. Since the diameter is 16 inches, that gives us a radius of 8 inches. Well, that's it for today. Just remember to keep following the strategy for solving word problems, and with more practice, it'll get easier. See you later.